The Voice Season 23 winner Gina Miles dazzled the crowd at Churchill Downs Friday with her rendition of the national anthem for the pre-Kentucky Derby Oaks race. The artist confirmed her arrival in Kentucky on her Instagram story Thursday, showing off a photo of an overflowing gift basket and writing, "Can't wait to sing tomorrow." Miles was the first of two artists guided across the Voice's finish line by coach Niall Horan. The second became Huntley a season later. Grammy Award nominee Grace Potter will handle national anthem duties for the main horse racing event Saturday, May 3. "Music is a place I have always felt at home," Miles states on her official website. "It was involved in all aspects of my life, from family to school to my free time. I never thought that all the time I spent writing songs would amount to anything. But soon I realized that the best part of singing is sharing it with people. I want to tell stories that remind you, you are never alone. Music is something that brings people together, and I hope to do that with mine. We're on this journey together, one step at a time." At Churchill Downs, where the atmosphere was buzzing with excitement, the sun was shining in the late afternoon, casting a golden glow over the area. The 149th Kentucky Derby was about to take place on May 6, 2023, and it was just a few moments away from happening. The grandstands, which were crowded with more than 150,000 spectators, glistened with colorful hats and seersucker suits, creating a kaleidoscope of enthusiasm and tradition. At the same time as the perfume of mint juleps blended with the earthy aroma of the track, thoroughbred horses were being mounted. Their glossy coats were shining brightly. A special moment was about to captivate the heart of Louisville, and that moment was Gina Miles, the newly announced champion of The Voice Season 23, singing the national anthem. This moment was going to take place before the horses thundered down the stretch, before the crowd yelled for the Run for the Roses. Just a few days before Gina, who was 19 years old and from Paxton, Illinois, had risen to prominence when her passionate performances on NBC's The Voice earned her the title of Most Popular Contestant under the direction of Niall Horan. The weight of the moment was beginning to settle over her as she stood on a stage in the middle of the infield. Her voice, which was a combination of raw strength and delicate refinement, had won over millions of people. Her performance would set the tone for an event that would be viewed by millions of people all over the world. The Kentucky Derby was more than just a race. It was established as a cultural institution and a celebration of tradition. As she approached the microphone, the noise level of the crowd significantly decreased. Gina's auburn hair rustled in the breeze as she examined the sea of faces that were gathered together on this momentous occasion. Her eyes were drawn to the features of jockeys, trainers, families, and spectators. In a reference to the ageless nature of the occasion, she donned a navy dress that was both simple and elegant. She pinned a single rose to her chest, which was reminiscent of the garland that would eventually be draped over the horse that won the competition. The voice of the announcer roared when she was introduced, and a wave of ovation erupted throughout the stands the moment she was introduced. This was more than just a performance for Gina. It was an opportunity to pay tribute to her homeland, her family, and the road that had brought her to this point in her life. The first few notes of the Star-Spangled Banner were played, and a single trumpet gave the signal that the performance had begun. It was then that Gina's voice came in, crystal clear and unwavering, piercing through the warm air of Kentucky. According to the early light of dawn, "Oh, say, are you able to see?" A faint huskiness that conveyed both strength and fragility was present in her tone, which was deep and resonant. After removing their hats and placing their hands over their hearts, the audience became silent. The riders halted their preparations in the jockey's room, and their heads bowed slightly in a respectful manner. It appeared as if even the horses had become motionless, as if they had sensed the gravity. There was nothing flashy about Gina's performance. In contrast to some people, she did not rely on vocal runs or dramatic flourishes in her performance. As an alternative, she allowed the melody of the song to breathe, her voice rising and falling like the tide does. The feeling that each note was deliberate and laced with the feeling of a young woman who had grown up singing in venues in tiny towns and dreamed of performing on platforms like this was palpable. Her experience on The Voice had taught her to connect with others and to turn every song into a tale. And now she was delivering the story of the United States of America to an audience from all over the world. As she got closer, her voice soared through the huge expanse of Churchill Downs, permeating the entire area. "And the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air," she said. Although she was familiar with the phrases, they felt fresh to her. However, it was not the air that caused the spectators in the grandstands to feel a cold. Rather, it was the force of her delivery. At the first row, there was a group of veterans who stood a bit taller than the rest of the audience. Their features were worn but proud. An adorable small girl, dressed in a bright pink fascinator, clung to her mother's hand and murmured, "She is beyond incredible." There was a connection between the past and the present, as well as between the individual and the group, through Gina's voice. Her performance was framed by the twin spires, which formed a setting that was both iconic and immovable. The image of her was displayed on the infield screen, and it was visible from every nook and cranny of the track. Her face was one of quiet resolve. She reached the high note on "O'er the Land of the Free" with a purity that seemed to pierce the sky, and as she closed with "And the Home of the Brave," her voice lingered, delicate yet determined. She was a strong vocalist. The final note lingered in the atmosphere, and during that brief moment, Churchill Downs was completely silent. Suddenly, there was a roar. The audience erupted in applause, creating a tidal wave of sound that swept across the track. Between the infield and the Millionaires' Row, there was a reverberation of cheers and whistles. The expression on Gina's face was one of relief and appreciation, and she gave a slight wave. A moment of pride was shared by the crowd as a result of her actions, which brought them together before the turmoil and excitement of the race took over. The crowd's reaction was not simply for her voice. There was a frenzy of activity among the journalists who were seated in the press box. One would later write, "Gina Miles delivers a national anthem for the ages," or something along those lines. Fans from The Voice and new admirers alike began to praise her poise as clips of her performance began to spread throughout social media platforms. An individual tweeted, "She sang it like she meant it," which resulted in thousands of others liking the message. A different user made the following post, "The Kentucky Derby has just gained a new star, and it's not a horse." To Gina, the moment seemed unreal and unreal. She could hear the crowd's cheers that were still going strong as she was being led away from the stage by the crew of the event. In the backstage area, her family waited with smiles on their faces. She was embraced by her mother, who had tears in her eyes as she did so. "Gina, you have accomplished this," she murmured. She received a pat on the shoulder from Niall Horan, who had flown in to show his support for her. The Irish accent he spoke with was filled with pride as he said, "That's my girl." The Derby itself would soon become the focal point of attention, with Mage, a long shot who was favored by 15-1 odds, sprinting to a surprising triumph. On the other hand, Gina's anthem was a highlight for many people, a memory that will be imprinted alongside the drama of the race. The tone of her performance had been one of reverence and unity, serving as a reminder of the reasons why traditions, such as the Derby, continue to exist. It was not only about the horses, the bets, or the spectacle. Rather, it was about moments that brought people together and transcended all boundaries. In the days that followed, Gina's performance was frequently rehashed on morning shows and sports highlights programs. Those who produce music took notice, and they began to receive offers for gigs. But the Derby was a very personal event for Gina. It was an opportunity to stand on one of the larger platforms in the United States of America, not as a dreamer from a tiny town, but as a voice that had the power to move a whole nation. She would soon be going back to Paxton, but she would always remember this day. It was the day when her voice, which was unfiltered and genuine, became a part of the illustrious history of the Kentucky Derby. As the sun descended below the horizon and Churchill Downs became empty, the reverberation of Gina Miles' hang continued to reverberate. It was a tune that was sewn into the fabric of the 149th Kentucky Derby, a moment in which a young woman from Illinois reminded the world of what it means to sing with heart.